Hello. Hi, friends. Hi, friends. How is everyone? Hola. Welcome. We're officially live. We've made it to episode 12. I'm so excited. I appreciate each and every one of you stopping by, being here. Welcome, welcome. We're ready to kick off another week. It's Monday. We've made it. Everyone get settled in, get comfortable. Everyone's sounding good. Give me a shout out. Let me know you can hear me. I'm going to turn on some music here, hopefully. And it's really exciting to be here. All right. Well, I want to thank StreamYard for powering tonight's episode. Shout out to StreamYard. And I want to welcome you to my show. I'm your host, DJ, if you don't know me. But welcome, welcome, welcome. Come on in, get settled, drop some love in the chat, say hello to each other. That's why we're here. We're going to have a great conversation. We're going to talk about autism, awareness, and acceptance. So we're going to get to that soon. We're going to say hello to our guest here in a few minutes. All right. Let's see. I cannot wait. All right. So this is where I normally go ahead and give the my little intro when I want to welcome everybody and talk about how we destigmatize and normalize mental health and disability here. And we talk about traumatic experiences. This is a place where we share our mayhem. We want to create opportunities and we want to connect and be the voice to break stigmas and stereotypes. So each guest is going to share their experience that deserves to be known. And I always like to add a trigger warning just in case. I want to encourage everyone to use discretion as we can talk about things that can be a little difficult and mature in nature. All right, chat. I'm going to get to you here in a second. Real quick, if you're new, please don't forget to tap the subscribe button or the follow button, whatever platform you're on. I appreciate the support. You can follow me on Twitch, Facebook, and I'm on YouTube. But you can connect with me on LinkedIn. That is my favorite. Okay, so, all right, we're going to go ahead and get into it. We're going to start warming up. I'm going to introduce you to my guest today. She is an autism researcher, a project coordinator, and a mom. She's an expert who works with the research and with her project coordinating. She does recruitment and enrollment of kids and families into the autism research projects that take place at the Center for Autism and Neurodevelopmental Disorders. That's part of UC-Irvine. There she facilitates communications, and then she works with teams of experts and participants and their families as she advocates and works on the improvement of early diagnosis, the follow-up, the access to services, and making an autism-ready community. She's very passionate about this, helping families on the spectrum understand their options for therapies and services and maximizing everyone's potential. You know, I'm all about that. So she loves to write, she edits, she does grants. She's just all into it, and she's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I can't wait to introduce you to her. She's also a mom of 2 children on the autism spectrum. And of course, they have a little sister, so keeping them on their toes. So wonderful family. We're going to welcome her here to the show. And we're going to have Miss Meghan Dawson. Okay. Hello,
hey, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. This is so exciting.
I'm so glad to be here. Okay, so now that you're here, we're going to go ahead and pop in the chat. So we're going to start saying hi. We're going to say hi to you. Tim, thank you for coming. Jackie's here. Thank you, Jackie. I appreciate your support always. She never misses an episode, it seems. She's like number 1. Yes, welcome, Megan. All right, Jackie. She's always so fun. All right, we also have Gabe. Welcome, welcome. Thank you, Tim. I appreciate that. Krista, my guest from last week. Thank you for coming this week. We're going to have a great discussion. All right, everyone's shouting out. Daniel's here. Want to be the dad person in the house. Okay. Kenneth Dunner Jr., he's here. Savor the flavor. That's his trademark. That's the tagline. Always want to make sure we give him his hellos. And then John. Hi, John. What's going on? Shout out to the people whose name begin with T. Okay. All right. Hey. Jihan. Hey. She's saying hi to Jackie. I see you, G. I see you. Did I miss anybody? I want to make sure I got everybody that's at least said hello in the chat once. Oh, I see Deru. What's up, Darren? Thank you, my friend. for stopping by. Carl, oh, hello, Carl. Thank you for coming. This is the first time for you. And then we have James. What's up, James? Okay, James is stopping by. All right, Nina. Hi. I don't know. Hello. Good to see you. Tell me your name, and I would love to give you a shout out. All right. What's up? Hey, Drew. All right. Drew's on Twitch. We got a lot of family. We got people on YouTube. We got people on Facebook. We got people on Twitch. So as they pop in, hopefully we'll have a really good conversation tonight. Megan, how are you doing?
I'm good. I saw someone made the comment, was there anything I don't do? The answer is sleep.
That's a good answer.
Wow.
Well, you are all over it, and I'm so excited to hear. We have a lot of topics to get through. I know.
Wow. Thank you so much for having me. April's a big month for autism awareness. I used to say when my kids were little, they were just raising awareness loudly in Target, in the supermarket, wherever they were having a tantrum. It's just autism awareness. That's all. So.
Yeah, right. And that's something we want to talk about. That has to go with the acceptance part that I wanted to really work on today and incorporate into the conversation, because I know as I was doing a little bit of research with the autism awareness for this month and really like the theme, it was really to include more of the acceptance component, right?
For sure. And it's funny because when my kids were first diagnosed, like my son, he is 10 and a half, and he was diagnosed when he was about maybe 1.5. And so back then, it's not that autism wasn't, a fairly commonly known thing, I guess, but like organizations were still focused on like awareness. What is autism? Get that information out there. And these days, I think it's pretty common, people have a friend or a family member or someone at their church, or they're aware of it. Mm-hmm. And now the question comes like, okay, like if everyone knows about it, what's next? And the answer is acceptance. The answer is like creating that autism ready or whatever, condition ready community, because everyone wants to be a part, Yes. Like everyone wants friends, everyone wants a job and a good life and to achieve whatever it is that they're after. So.
Absolutely. That's something that I talk about, right? We talk about accessibility, first of all, and you can't be inclusive if you're not making things accessible to others. So for me, that really is important, creating that accessibleness and then beginning your behaviors, your language to be more inclusive, right? And what we put out there and how we really just communicate with individuals, right? Without setting like specific expectations and just being more open. And so many, I hear you. That's so important.
Yeah. And, I think that these days, there are a lot more self-advocates out there, which is so exciting to see. And that was something that I was really looking for, especially when my kids were little. And I was thinking to myself, like, I don't know, I can read and be like, oh, well, this research says, or this, even the insurance company says that they should do this therapy. But then when sometimes you would hear someone who had been through that therapy talk about it, and maybe they didn't have a great experience with it, maybe it makes me think, oh, maybe I shouldn't do that therapy. Or maybe it makes me think, okay, these are the things I'm going to look for. Because if this person felt, like ABA, applied behavioral analysis, is a big deal, some people are very for it. Some people are very against it. And so when I looked at it, I actually had several friends whose older children had been through that therapy, and they spoke out about what it was that really didn't work for them. And they were very verbal. They were very eloquent. I mean, really, really smart, well-spoken kids. I mean, they're 20. They're under 30 years old kid. But, they really pointed out to me like what I should be looking for. And that actually helped, because then when my kids were getting that same therapy, I was able to say, this is good. This is what that should have happened for them and didn't, like maybe they felt like it was very, not letting them be who they were. Like, no, I'm sorry, you have to act in a certain way. You have to be in the box. You can't respond. You can't do anything different. Whereas with my kids, it was a tickle fest and running around the room. Oh, and then they'll work on a skill.
Okay. So one thing I want to pull up is the prevalence of autism, right? Absolutely. So we'll start with this, right? So back in 2010, it was 1 in 125 children. Yes. And just in the matter of 10 years, it's been shown it's now 1 in 59 children. Mm-hmm. So
and it is the thing about that, just, so that's 8-year-old data. Because they're looking at 8-year-olds in 10 or 11 different states. It changes sometimes from year to year. So up until 2 years ago, my kids didn't count. They didn't exist in those numbers because they were not born. They weren't 8 yet. So, when we look at these numbers and we keep saying like, oh my gosh, it's actually now 1 in 59. No, 8 years ago, it was 1 in 59. And we'll see what it is 2020 in 2028.
Right, right. So that some new numbers will be coming out, I assume.
Yeah.
So we'll see where we're at, I guess.
Yeah. And a big one for me is that, yes, it's 1 in 59, but it's actually 1 in 34 boys. Boys are hit about 4 times more often, or given diagnoses of autism 4 times more often than girls. And there's a lot more research looking at girls now. They tend to present differently, particularly if they are of average intelligence and very verbal. They tend to mask a lot better, and it is easier to blend and fit in. Whereas sometimes boys, for whatever reason, it just no, they're just who they are, and what you get, what you get, what you see is what you get.
So it's more like kind of just a dismissiveness, just kind of.
I think it's more that.
Oh, thank you. Daniel calls it autism inclusivity. Daniel.
Nice.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you. Yeah, I know Daniel is also a parent, and he's very well knowledgeable. So he's always someone good to connect with, have some amazing conversations with. But yeah, Daniel, share away. I would love to hear more on your point of view, your experience. So
yeah, some of the research points to girls having better social and play skills, just kind of in general. But then again, that research is pretty, I don't know, thin, shall we say. I can say from my experience, I've got one girl on the spectrum and one boy on the spectrum. They both struggle with very different things. They're both strong and excellent at very different things. Right. And, for my daughter, she is the definition of an extrovert. If she were here right now, she would already have pushed me out of the way to talk to all of you because you're all her friends. Whereas my son is maybe a little bit more introverted just in general. Like that's just a personality thing, not an autism thing.
Right.
And her play skills were always excellent. Her social skills, she always was very motivated, obviously extrovert. She has to meet everybody. They're all her friend. And so it's just, I could have seen her getting missed. And I think she wouldn't have gotten diagnosed if her younger brother hadn't been diagnosed. And then we were sitting there looking at her going, she does a lot of the same stuff. It's just, she's always talking, always in her sleep talking. So I think that that's been the case with a lot of girls and even a lot of young women who are now saying, I always felt that I, was different somehow, or I always felt that I had a challenge in this area, but everyone just said, oh, but you're so whatever, sweet, good at school, quiet, there's nothing wrong with you. And, in some ways that's really dismissive. And, it's maybe they didn't need, ABA therapy, or maybe they didn't need speech therapy, but to feel, kind of excluded and on the outside is not a great way, to spend your growing up years either. So.
Right. There was a comment that Darren brought up. It says, I can't believe the numbers are so high. Do they think aluminum has anything to do with it? That's a good question. My neurologist wanted me to avoid aluminum cans and cheap pans for cooking. I didn't know if there was an association or if you had heard anything. That's a good question.
So it's a big question, especially among parents. A lot of families are very worried because the difficulty with autism is that we can't say, oh, we know what causes it. Nope. Sorry. Right. All the research is 2021. We don't know. And that's a frustration. I can tell you it's a big frustration for me as a parent. It's like, guys, how do we not have something we can point to? And so, yes, some people look at aluminum and think that it might be involved, especially because it has been shown to be involved in things like Alzheimer's. And sometimes it's not to say that autism is like Alzheimer's, but, when you start to see a buildup of it in the brain, then it starts to get ugly.
Concerning. Yeah, there's a concern there for sure.
So, some people look at that. Other people, are more concerned about pesticides. There's so many things that you can look at. There were some interesting studies that I did read, not at all done by my center, but they were looking at autism prevalence in relation to coal burning plants. So if you have a plant in your state or wherever that burns coal, They looked at the autism prevalence within 5 miles. Well, I think it was within 1, 5, and 10 miles. And the further away you got, the lower the prevalence was. Now, the issue with those kind of studies is like, okay, but where was the plant? Was it near a major city? Because then you get less people as you move away from a major city anyway. And when they analyzed the data, they were saying that that didn't have anything to do with it. So, you know, the thing about autism is that we have twin studies. We have identical twins. And they only have about a 50 to 75% concordance, meaning both twins have autism rate. So if you have identical genetics and one twin can have it and the other one doesn't, it cannot be 100% genetic. It can have a strong underlying predisposition genetically, which is what, you know, I think most people are thinking for autism. But something's got to pull the trigger. Something has to kick one kid off into autism and the other one avoided it, apparently, despite having the exact same genes, living in the same family, being in the same womb, like as much the same as you're going to get with 2 human beings. So, you know, it is still a frustration to me. Like, I wish I could tell you, like, oh, yes, they've discovered this, they've discovered that, but they haven't. And, you know, a lot of research is still ongoing. A lot of it is genetic. I think genetics is very valuable, but I tend to get frustrated when such a high percentage of research dollars go to that, because it's like, okay, great. Like, you find the gene, like, that's important, but that's not going to help all of the people who are here now. You know, and there are a lot of kids, there are a lot of teens, there are a lot of adults, there are a lot of families who need funding for help and programs that are great, that are underfunded and can't reach as many people as they would want. And yet we're pouring all this money into genetics. You know, like, there has to be a balance. So,
wow,
that's my 2 cents as a researcher.
That's a good one. Oh, hi, Dorothy. Thanks for popping in. Thank you. Okay, Jackie said, makes a really good question. I would love to see that there be a shift away from the perception of autism entailing deficits, but instead looking towards strengths and diversity, which I'm strength-based. I love that approach. And, you know, any work that I do personally when I'm working with someone on a one-on-one basis. So yes, Jackie, I think we agree on that.
And I think the trick there is that so many of the services are deficit based. And so, like, as a parent, as, you know, even like someone who would be like working with someone in the community, like, you want that person to get access to those services, but to get access, you have to define the deficit.
Right.
I mean, I can tell
they can't do this. They can't do that. They can't do this. They're not, you know, caught up in this area. They're still delayed in this area. Right. Instead of saying they're really good at this and they're really great at that and they're highly skilled and I've seen them at So
yeah.
So important. Wow.
To be fair, then that person may start thinking of themselves just that way, you know, and that's not at all what anyone would want. You know, I can tell you
a lot with, you know, any mental diagnoses. And then when we start talking about the stereotypes, the stigmas, and then the ongoing judgment that, you know, you just start to get weighs on you, right? It takes a toll on you. If that's all you have to repeat, that's your narrative. Every time you go to the doctor, every time you go to a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a neurologist, you know, and change any sort of specialist, and you have to
what's wrong
retell
with
the story, what's wrong with you.
Wrong. Yeah.
The wrong part. So yeah, it's definitely
a friend of mine whose son is, he's graduating this year. God, we got old. But he for after a certain point, when your kid has services, like through the schools, your kid gets to start coming to the IEPs, to those meetings that determine what services your child is getting at the schools. And I think that's actually really great, because then they can speak for themselves. You know, I might sit there and be oh, you know, my daughter loves this. And she'd be like, actually, let me tell you about what I love. Because she has all the opinions.
Important. Yeah.
But once he started going, he prepared PowerPoints on himself. And he would present, here is what I'm really good at. Here is what I really like. And it didn't necessarily have, you know, maybe it didn't have anything to do with school. If it was something that he really liked, you know, like, let's be honest, how much of us, our favorite thing is school? Low percentage. But that way, he was coming in and saying, this is a meeting about me. So I want you to know about me. And maybe you don't know that I am the Pokemon master. First. You know? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Person first. Let's talk about you as a person. Yeah. Good for him.
And I think that's super important. So I can't wait for my kids to get to that point. I think it starts in I think it's just before high school. I think it's 8th grade. So mine aren't quite there yet, but we'll see. My daughter's PowerPoint is going to be like 3 hours long. She's very excited.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. Okay, so I'm gonna pull up like something else I wanted to go into and the differences. So
Yeah.
we talk about the spectrum, right? Wide range, different skills, abilities.
Yeah.
So and then there's Asperger's. I think I spelled that wrong. I should fix that. But yes, and other ASDs. So other ASDs, what's the difference? I'm gonna try to fix that.
So back, I forget when exactly we switched from, so autism is diagnosed not by a medical set of standards, it's diagnosed by a psychological set of standards. So they use the Psychological Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, DSM, and it used to be version 4, now it's been upgraded to version 5. It happens every couple of years. And they changed some things, like, for a while there, like literally being homosexual was listed in that. Not anymore, because it is not a disorder. But based on the thinking in maybe the 90s, it was in there. And so they updated, and hopefully they get things a bit more right each time. DSM-4 was when my kids were diagnosed, 2011, 12, 13. And back then, you could be diagnosed with Asperger's. You could be diagnosed with classic autism. You could be diagnosed with something called PDD, pervasive developmental disorder.
I remember that.
Specify it or not. And not was probably the most common. NOS, not otherwise specified. We don't know. They're just delayed.
I remember that.
That's actually what my kids got when they were diagnosed. Then in whatever year, 2014, I think, maybe more recent, they switched to DSM-5. In DSM-5, they took all of that, Asperger's, PDD, autism, it's all one. And they put them all on the autism spectrum. And they said, okay, you can have a severity rating. So 3 would be requiring the most support, 2 would be requiring a good amount of support, and 1 would be requiring some, but not too much support. And that's kind of how they defined it. Now, what any doctor or psychologist feels is a lot versus not so much versus just a little bit. I mean, that's all very subjective. And the difficulty there was that a lot of people who identified as Asperger's or Aspies felt like, hey, I don't belong in the same category, and so that was a big deal. And I completely understand it. Like, if you have gone and you have accepted this as part of who you are, and it was, I think, a very descriptive way of saying, if you said someone had Asperger's, more than likely they were very verbal, very bright, and probably living a pretty independent life. Like, that was kind of the typical, person with Asperger's, where if you said autism, it conjured up kind of a different, maybe they weren't as verbal, maybe they weren't able to live on their own. And PDD and OS, like, nobody knew. It was just like, who knows? Like, you're just
catch all.
Like, you're somewhere in there, we don't know. So, now I don't personally have a huge problem with the DSM-5. Like, I think it is a good way for me. I think it is a good way to make sure that everyone gets access to services, which is really what most people need a diagnosis for. I mean, like, maybe it's good for you to know for yourself, certainly. But a lot of times it's like, how can I get X, Y, and Z therapy? How can I get X, Y, and Z service? And sometimes people with an Asperger's diagnosis were being denied. And sometimes people with an autism diagnosis were also being denied based on what an insurance plan would or would not cover. So then when everything became autism, insurance plans kind of had to fall into line and be like, all right, we'll cover for this. But it was a big thing. Like, it was a big deal for a lot of people, feeling like, hey, this was like a major part of my identity, and I don't really like that you just took it away because you felt like editing your book.
Wow.
Yeah. And I mean, it would be like the same thing if, like, they suddenly said, oh, all depression and anxiety and all these other ones, we're just going to call it something else. And it's like, well, wait, like, I don't have all of the other parts, why would you put me in with all of this stuff that doesn't apply? So I get it, but it's what we have to work with right now. So
right. And that goes into
DSM-6 could be back. We don't know.
We don't know. So yeah, that really goes into getting a diagnosis and how important that is, really, and at the early age, which we haven't really covered yet, the signs and the symptoms.
Yeah.
So we'll have to kind of go into which one do you want to go? Which one's the more important one that we should start at and draw?
I think, we could talk signs and symptoms. So in little kids, it used to be that if you wanted to get a diagnosis before they were the age of 3, good luck to you. Like, that was going to be a hard task. A lot of neurologists were the only ones who were allowed to if they were under 3, and most of them didn't want any part of it because they're like, I see kids with seizures. Like, I do brain surgery. What do you want? Like, what, your kid isn't talking. They're one, like, come back when they're supposed to be talking, and a lot of times it just got brushed off. Nowadays, I would say that, honestly, your PCP can diagnose autism. Like, a lot of them don't feel comfortable doing that, and they may want to refer out, but it's not like they can't. It's not like they can't put the diagnosis in that kid's chart and get them, not licensed for, but like access to the services. So if you're looking at a young child, say 2 and under, and you're wondering, because 2-year-olds, whoops, sorry, that is my alarm. 2-year-olds often, they're just starting to talk, and a lot of people are like, oh, well, their dad was a late talker, or, oh, he seems to understand everything, he's just not talking. A lot of times, I think the best thing you can do is talk to your pediatrician about exactly what milestones are set for what ages. Because when they set a milestone, when they say by 12 months, they should have 2 to 3 words besides mama and dada, or whatever version of that you're using. When they say by 18 months, they should have roughly 12 to 20 words. And by, 24 months, they should be combining 2 and 3 words. When they say that, they mean like 90% of kids do it by that age. It's not most, it's not some, it's 90%. Like, if your kid is not doing it, they are already in like the lowest 10 percentile for that development. And it's the same for like when they roll over, when they sit up, when they start to crawl, when they start to walk. And so a lot of times we'll see with kids, not only were they, speech delayed, but they also had other delays. Like, they crawled late, or maybe they skipped crawling. They walked late, and the parents may have just thought, oh, they're just a little slow. But it's like and the pediatricians honestly used to often feed into that and say, oh, he's just a little slow. Boys are slower than girls. Boys are not slower than girls. There's something going on that's causing a delay. And so it used to be very much the wait and see approach. Oh, let's just wait and see. Maybe by the next, 3 months from now, 6 months from now, next well child check, he'll have caught up. And sometimes kids will. It's not like, kids also have their variations. They're their own little people. They do things on their own timetable. But now the wait and see approach has very much been changed for the let's get some therapy and see. Let's get them access to some services and see. Because if they can make it up, great, then they don't need the services anymore. Fantastic. That's what everyone's going for. So I would say, in a young kid, look up, CDC always has all of the ages and stages. They have all of the, monthly milestones. If you're worried that your child is not making those, or that they've missed a few, but maybe they've hit some others, talk to your pediatrician. Like, that's always going to be the first step. And if they're not taking you seriously, get a new pediatrician.
Oh, yes.
Seriously, and then I was
in your banner, in your bio, you had said something that you learned that sometimes you have to play nice and work with the system, but then those other times that you have to put on that war paint and you have to get ready to fight for what your kids need.
For sure. The biggest example of that, we had an insurance. So my son was nonverbal. He did not speak at all. English, language had nothing to do with him. You could call his name, you got nothing. If Elmo came on, he was going to look at Elmo because Elmo was awesome, but nothing else mattered.
Elmo is awesome.
Elmo is so awesome.
So awesome.
He would buy me 10 minutes of silence. It was beautiful. But I was trying to get speech therapy because he was 2 and not talking. And it had been recommended that he receive speech therapy, and the insurance was denying it because it was rehabilitative. And since he had never spoken, it was not a loss of speech, and they wouldn't cover it. And the poor girl on the phone, I think she knew that she was about to die if she didn't give me to her supervisor. I never said a mean word to her, but she must have heard it. And she was like, I'm going to get you my supervisor. I'm like, yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Yes, you are. Right now.
Something where we had to take it to HR of the company we worked for, because it was in the policy like that. They weren't making it up. That's what the insurance policy said. And so we had to go educate nicely HR about why this was pretty unacceptable. And to their credit, they immediately changed it. So it's if we hadn't fought for it, if we just been oh, I guess they won't cover it, so I guess he won't get any speech, No, that wasn't going to be an option. But I think for a lot of families, they don't know that you can push back and that you're going to have to. And that was just one of 1,000 times sense, you know?
Wow, I didn't make a banner for that, but we should talk about pushback.
Well,
How important that is in this. I was reading in the research when I was preparing for the show about how expensive it is. Really,
so expensive.
So expensive. You know, when you have a child on the spectrum and you're
We had
autism spectrum, and you're trying to,
like, we had good insurance, like PPO, good insurance, co-pays for 5-day-a-week ABA, which was the recommendation, twice a week speech, and once a week PT. $22,000 in 1 year. Co-pays, not deductible, co-pays. And so anytime someone's like mad about Obamacare, I'm like, he made the co-pays count towards your deductible. It's the most important thing that's ever been done. Like, you don't understand. Like, that took how much out of pocket I could have from 22,000 plus, because that was one kid. That wasn't his sister. That was one kid.
One child.
You know? And it took that from 22 grand, and it could have gone up from there, capped it at the out-of-pocket max. So, like, I'm sure there are other issues with, you know.
right. But we're talking about the price.
That one thing I was like, yes. And that was with good insurance, you know, and a lot of families, like, so at the center I work with, we have a very large underserved population. You know, a lot of families that
talk about,
you know, make way less than $25,000 a year, you know, may have whatever levels of education, but just, you know, are barely scraping by. And so a lot of them are on CalOptima, which is our version of Medi-Cal for our state, because I'm in California. And we are one of the few centers that takes it. No one else wants to handle that kind of low reimbursement for services. And so then they try and find a company to do speech therapy, or they try to find a company to provide other therapies, and they're given a 2 to 6 month wait list minimum, you know, and they have to call 80 companies to get a 2 to 6 month wait list for all of them and see which one gets back to them first. And that's really, like, a lot of families aren't going to do that. Like, they're just not able. And it's not that they're, you know, bad. It's not that they don't love their kid, but, like, who has that kind of time, you know? And it's just really tough. So, I mean, I was very fortunate in that I'm more of an ornery person to begin with. So every time they were like, we have a wait list, I'm like, challenge accepted. Like, I will get on your wait list, and I will call you every week to see what number I am on your wait list. And you will regret ever putting me on it, because you're going to talk to me so much. Like, and I had one company that was like, they knew my number. Hi, Mrs. Dawson. No, I'm sorry. You're number 4 though. Okay. Yeah. We'll talk to you next week. Okay. Bye. Yeah.
There you go. That's it. Yeah. They're talking about it. Ken Thunder Jr. says it. You have to go to war for your kids. No ifs, ands, or buts about it, baby.
Yep.
And that's for, you know, children with, like, all kinds of, like, that's just the system in itself.
For sure.
Oof.
Yeah. And I don't want to make it sound like these companies are against you. You know, like, it's not like the poor lady on the other end of the phone was just reading me what my insurance plan said. She was still going to die if she didn't transfer me to her supervisor. But, you know, she wasn't against me. You know, the speech therapy places that had a 6 month wait list, they weren't against me. But it's a very tough system to work within. And, you know, a lot of families, they get pushed back, and they're like, oh, well, I guess I can't get that service. And it's like, no. You got to fight each and every day. Like, you got to, and I tell people, you know, if they ask me, I'm like, take a half hour every day. That's your half hour to call whatever it is that you need next. And you're going to call them every day.
Keep advocating.
Yeah. Make yourself a note. Mondays are the day that I call back this company to ask them where I am on the wait list. Like, hi guys, it's me again.
Yes. Okay.
So,
yeah. Let's see. What else we got? I know we were going to talk about a little bit of transitions, you know, with children and adolescents, and how, you know, as they're going through all this, they're getting services, the parents, caregivers, relatives that are caring for them. They're going through a lot, right? It's a lot that they're going through. So I know how important it is to start early. We talked a little bit about the early signs and getting them diagnosis and treatment.
Yeah.
But I do want to talk about adolescents and then the young adults and that age group and population, and move more into that direction.
Sure. And I think, early diagnosis is only important. It's not like they used to think, oh, there's a window. Oh, you didn't hit the window for speech, your kid's never going to talk. No, we've got 17-year-olds starting to talk now, and they had been nonverbal up till that point. And usually at that point, it's more of a motor planning thing. And it wasn't that they didn't understand. I think that the misconception of like, oh, non-talking means non-thinking has been pretty well shattered. And like, if people are still thinking that, like, maybe they should join the 21st century. But it used to be like, oh, early, because that's the only way, if you don't before they're 3, they'll never talk. If you don't before they're 5, they'll never whatever. And, at this point, like, yeah, early intervention is super important because the more years you can get therapy, the more, you can maybe accomplish. Sometimes it's easier to do stuff with little kids. And once they get to be teenagers, we all have our opinions on things when we're teenagers, and kids with autism are no different. In fact, maybe they have more opinions than your normal kid.
Right.
My 12-year-old has all the opinions and she's not shy about telling you. But,
right.
I think the trick with transition is that so often, like, parents get the diagnosis, and their kid maybe goes into the school system and they have their education plan and they have their IEP and they have their services and they have their therapies and they do well. And then they get to be teenagers and they're running into issues with independence. Maybe, you've got an 18-year-old who can go in the shower and can get wet, but is not clean because they forget to use soap, or they use soap, but they forget to use shampoo. And there's a lot of stuff around that. And so as families, are looking and having, teens and even, graduating from high school or going into an adult transition program after the, typical 12th grade year, a lot of the stuff that the school can work on is not what the kid might need. It's not what the family might need in order for them to become more independent. And so, I'm always talking to families and saying, look, like, again, we don't want to necessarily focus on the disability, but so many of the services are disability driven. So we've had families that have gone and they've applied, like out here, we have Regional Center, and Regional Center is a kind of our California state-based system for anyone with a disability. It could be someone with, dementia over age 60, whatever, or it could be, a 2-year-old on the spectrum. It's everything in between. So a lot of kids get turfed at age 3 because the law says at age 3 you have to qualify with even more severe deficits. Fine. My kids get kicked out at 3. They send them to the school system and they say, okay, the school system and your private insurance or public, state-based insurance can handle this. When a kid starts to get up till 13, 14, 18, 19, 20, a lot more is expected of them. So you don't expect necessarily a 5-year-old to be able to go take a bath. You do expect your 15-year-old to be able to go take a bath and become clean. To a certain extent, all teenagers are somewhat stinky. It's a spectrum on that one too.
The thing, yeah.
But, a lot of families don't realize that they can reapply to something like Regional Center, to something like, the state-based organizations that support people with disabilities, and they can start getting a lot of the therapies paid for that way again. And so that's something that I'm always trying to stress to families is like, hey, even if they turfed you at age 3, even if they said you didn't qualify at age 8, when you get up into the teen years, you got to look at what a normal teenager can do and what you would expect of someone of a normal, capacity at that age. And maybe your kid hits 9 things out of 10, but on that one thing, maybe you could get some help. And so I think that's so important. And really, my goal is always whatever their goal is. If my 12-year-old tells me she wants to go to art school, that's my goal for her. Like, I'm not going to be like, but what about being a doctor? I mean, what about being president? That'd be so awesome. But, our goal is always to help them get to wherever it is they want to go. But I think a lot of times because the supports start to drop off rather precipitously right towards the end of high school, a lot of, young adults start sitting there and thinking, well, I can't go to college. That'd be too much. I don't have an aide. I can't go to college. That would just be overwhelming. I can't take 4 classes. And it's like, oh no, honey, there are ways around all of that. And there are ways to get you exactly what you need. But if your parents don't know, unfortunately, it's not, I always joke, like, there's no menu. There's no menu of services. Like, oh, here's our menu of
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah, that's a great way of putting it.
From the one-on-one aid section, or would you like to order from the we will pay for your kids' college section? Like, all of that is out there. But if you don't know to ask for it or even to look for it, then you're not going to get it.
That's so hard. That is so hard. Getting
And I know that's something
information
that
out
you've
there.
seen, like,
Lack of
there's so many programs and so many great services. But again, like if you don't talk to someone, and a lot of times it's not going to be your doctor, especially your pediatrician, they're kind of like, oh, an 18-year-old, like what? We don't deal with those. And then you get into an adult practitioner's office and they're like, autism? What's that? Like, didn't you outgrow that? No, not how that works. And so just really knowing, to touch base with the schools. They're not always the best, but they should know where to send you. Out here in California, Department of Rehabilitation, huge resource, huge blocks of grant money. They want to buy all of your stuff. If you have a diagnosed disability, mental illness, physical disability, like, oh, you want to be a graphic designer? You need a laptop. Oh, you want to be a graphic designer? You need a laptop and you need Adobe Pro and all this other stuff. And can we pay for your college classes that are going to go towards that? And you need your textbooks too. Like a ridiculous amount of funding. And then families don't know to go access it. And so they're trying to pay, oh, well, maybe we can get, someone to come sit with him in class and make sure that he gets to his class okay. Regional center will do that. Department of Rehab will do that. But if they don't know to ask, then they go broke trying to provide the service because they think it's not there for them to go and get. So I think the biggest thing around transition is just to know that there's so much out there and to maybe find a mentor, find someone that you can just go and pick their brain for a couple hours. Like if you've got someone, whose kid has made it through college and is doing really well, like go bug them because you're not going to be bugging them. You're going to be giving them an opportunity to talk about their success. Like who doesn't want to do that? That always feels good.
No, I agree with that. Definitely like community resources, reaching out, Googling, trying to find out who are state-funded agencies, nonprofits that have grant monies from any foundations to put towards individuals that may have that diagnosis that have funding for that, or just more of a catch-all, like, an individual with a disability. So, but you have to go looking. You do have to, ask questions. You have to, it takes a lot of research as a parent and as a person, like trying to find what's going to work for you. Right. Yeah. So,
well, what works for one family and for one person may not be the other person's cup of tea. Like everybody is very distinct. Everybody is very much an individual. And, my kids were their own individuals from day one, and like one of them like the other. And I was like, oh, well, this is going to be interesting. So, like it's very important to always involve as much of involving the person who would be getting the service as possible. And, sometimes there are barriers there. Like my friend had a daughter who was so anxious that she could not bear to attend a meeting at the Department of Rehab for herself. Like for whatever reason, it was just triggering her in every single way. So she went, she called her kid and she left the phone on the desk. You can listen. You don't have to say anything, and it would have been Zoom, except that, we weren't cool back in that day. So, but now with COVID, everyone knows Zoom. But, there's always a way, I think is more the point. And, honestly, I think as a parent, one of the most important things is to reach out to the community and find support, because it can be, I don't want to say it can be
support group, right? Or parents, other parents, or Facebook groups.
It's always find your people, and whoever those may be.
Right.
And it's the same for the kids. And that's, kind of to go into acceptance. It's finding their tribe. It's finding their friends. It's finding the people who enjoy them. It's finding the people that they enjoy.
Right.
And so many times, parents will be like, oh my gosh, my kid doesn't have any friends at school. And it's like, cool. What do they like though? Send them to that. Find something for that. It's not there. Create something for that. Is your kid obsessed with Legos? I promise you, there are 10 other kids in the neighborhood who are also obsessed with Legos. And there are 10 other families who would probably really like to offload their Legos if you offered to take them to found a Lego club. I can't tell you how many boxes of Legos I have. Like it's above 9,000. It's so ridiculous. So, really like taking the time to say like, what does my, kid, young adult enjoy? How can I find a community of people who are also really going to enjoy that? Because, we all have our restricted areas of interest. Autism is one of my restricted areas of interest. And, we can pathologize it and be like, oh, people with autism tend to have very restricted interests. Cool. They just really like that thing. Like, let's go do that thing. Like, you love trains? So many trains. Like, let's go learn about the trains. And I can guarantee you there are 10 other kids that would really enjoy that. So at a certain point, it's kind of like, do they have to be able to talk about something other than Thomas the Train? Yes. You have to be able to go to school. You probably need to be able to talk about like math or whatever your teacher just asked you. The answer to 4 + 4 is not Thomas the Train. Like, you got to get past that one. But, after school is over, like, why not have a Thomas the Train fan club? That sounds fun. I'm joining, So.
600 Hot Wheels. We got Monster Jam.
Yes.
I think we have like a giant tub of Monster Jams. So,
and God forbid I call them Matchbox cars. No, Mom, they are Hot Wheels.
That's right. Hot Wheels. Oh gosh, it's so fun, but I think it's so true. And I know we've talked about like being more inclusive, like the birthday party invitation.
Yep.
Like, you just don't know when you get that invitation. Trying to find a way to reach out. If you can't make it, just reach out. Again, it's like connecting with individuals during these difficult times, these isolating times. Everyone's stress levels are increased. It's children, adults. I mean, we're all in this together. So anything to alleviate, decompress, bring a little bit more unity, a little bit more, connections. Yeah. I welcome that, and I encourage, for people to connect and find those resources.
Yeah.
Because there's so important.
Something I've seen that's really, really cool. So my kids do a karate program, and it was already awesome pre-COVID. Like, they had essentially a bunch of students who want to go on to become whatever, OT, PT, medical doctor, something. Like, they're usually pre-med. And they need clinical hours to look really good on their applications. So the karate dojo was like, let us help you out with that. You can come and volunteer with all of these kids who have different levels of disability. Some of it is physical, some of it is autism. And they tend to if it's more of a physical disability, how much support does that kid need? Maybe they can do a group class, maybe they need individual. Fine. And they would basically have at most one, the co-instructors per every 2 kids. And that was perfect for my kid, who wears, the ADHD cape with pride, along with his autism, because he can be in that class and having a great time and not remember a single thing that his sensei just told him. He was not actively trying to be distracted. He just is distracted. And so he can have someone like poke him very unobtrusively and be like, seriously, sensei's over there. You should probably I'll look over there, and start paying attention. The cool thing that they did is when COVID hit, they realized hey, nobody's seeing anybody. Nobody's going to school. No, schools were closed. Nobody's doing any kind of classes. Why don't we start having social skills meetups on Zoom for the kids who do karate together? And you can pick your topic. So they'd be like, okay, 4 p.m. on Mondays is superheroes. 5 p.m. is, movies. 6 p.m. is, villains. And you could pick which one you want to go to. And then the kids get in there, and some of them are maybe low teens, and they broke it out by age as well. So they kept low teens and under, and then higher teens and up, just so it wasn't an 8-year-old.
That is so cool.
And they love it.
Yeah.
And, they can sit there and last week I learned more about Batman and I love comics, and I felt that I knew quite a bit about Batman, having watched all of the movies and read quite a few of the comics. No, I did not know nearly not even a tenth of what this kid knew about Batman. And he was just having the greatest time, because every time he'd stop talking, another kid would be like, but what about this? And he'd be like, well.
And that just empowers them. It makes them feel fantastic. Confident. Yeah, they walk away, they're engaged, they're communicating, they're laughing, they're feeling positivity. So they're feeling welcome, they're feeling respected, validated in their opinions and their insights and their contributions to the conversation, something that they don't normally get in a public school setting, or even, it just depends, right, on the social situations or environmental situations. If they're homeschooled, or if they're doing virtual school now, that's something we really didn't talk about, but that in itself has to affect Yeah, well, right, as opposed to the options that are now available out in like out of the home school, public school,
Yep.
charter school. So yeah, there's a lot there.
Yep. Yeah.
Mary, that is a really cool idea. Yes. I just love that Zoom idea. I would have never thought, but just to hear kids connecting in that way,
Yeah.
like we can Zoom all day and we find out, we can connect and we find ways because we have the ability. But if we can get our kids to say, hey, you're gonna have a good, go get your costume on and come here.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, and the cool thing is that they, just like they would do for that class where you had like one of the student instructors paired with like two kids, they have at least one, instructor. I mean, they're not going to instruct you on Batman. That was totally that other kid's role, but one
Right.
person there kind of moderating it. And then it's maybe only 3 or 4 kids, because otherwise it gets too busy and everyone has to say something. And, it's like my kindergartner's class when it was the first day on Zoom, and the first thing they worked on was how to mute yourself. Because you have 20 kids in one Zoom room and they're all 5 years old. You need to know how to mute yourself. So
Wow.
yeah, it's been a really great experience. And it's the kind of thing where it's like we're not doing social skills groups right now. We're not going to therapies because we're staying home and trying to slow the spread and whatever else. But that doesn't mean that, he wants to sit by himself all year. Like, that's not fun. Or play with his younger sister all year, which is also somewhat not fun.
Right. And that's why these conversations are so important, right? Because we continue to bring that awareness. These conversations just kind of gave some really great ideas as to how they can be more accepting or more inclusive for their child. It may have given a parent an idea now, like, oh, okay, would have never thought that. Let's open up a Batman Zoom room and see how many kids want to join us, for one night. I don't know. It just takes a little bit of innovation, I guess. And then just maybe just playing with it, allowing it, right? Not just overthinking it. I know I'm an overthinker, but I think in these times we have to be creative and we have to be open and we have to be kind of think outside the box.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
Time.
No, the box is gone.
The box is all way
gone. Yeah. And, for myself, like if I'm looking at acceptance, and what am I looking for? It's the kid who sends a birthday party invitation to every single person in the class. Like that's really kind. Not because I know you got a class of like 30 plus kids. Like I guarantee you're not friends with all of them. Like you probably only really talk to maybe half, aside from like, oh, can you pass the paper or whatever. Right. But, for someone to do that, like that's really, kind, because 1 in 34 boys, classroom of 27 kids, you've probably got a boy on the spectrum in every classroom that there is, at least one. So, inviting the whole class takes the weirdness out of it, like, oh, wow, Mom, why did you invite that kid? I invited your whole class, honey. Everybody's here to have fun, and that's something that we always try to do. And, it usually works out really well. And to be honest, like kids at a birthday party, like if there's enough cake and stuff to do, like everyone's having a great time. So,
yeah. So that made me think of something else, right? So you send the overall invitations and that's just general across the board. Hey, we invite everybody. But how do we teach your children how to interact or be more comfortable and be more accepting of other kids in their classroom, perhaps, or out in the community, right? Because you know how it goes when you're out at the store and then they're like, oh, he's making funny noises, let's say, right? Or making faces. Yeah. So how do we educate our kids, just as we start to wrap up? I think this is really important to bring. How do we teach our kids to be more accepting and not ridicule or make fun of, or and make it worse, right? Make it more hard to just be more compassionate. So what can we tell our kids?
To be honest, and I was worried, like remembering back to elementary school, I'm like, kids were monsters. Like they were not nice. Like, oh my God.
Or on the other side, your child receiving that, right? Yeah. How do you help your child? They're like, honey, kids are going to be mean, right? So
yeah. And that has been the polar opposite of what I've experienced. And the kids at our elementary school, like my kids go to public school, they go to our neighborhood elementary school, they have IEPs, they sometimes get pulled, out of the classroom to go do speech or to go do whatever. So like everyone in their class, and like even for my oldest, like a lot of people probably wouldn't notice that there is something quote unquote wrong with her. They're just like, oh, whatever, you know, she goes to speech because she didn't say the letter R right. All of the wabbits are wascally. Okay. But for my son, no one is missing that something is there. You know, a lot of times kids will say hi and he just doesn't even notice. Like he's just like walking and he's probably thinking about supercars because if I'm being honest, he's always thinking about supercars. Because Lamborghinis are awesome and the best, in case you didn't know. But that kid will say hi to him again tomorrow, even if he said nothing to them the day before. And what I've seen the teachers do consistently is if the kid was like, oh man, like he just kept walking, they'll be like, oh, it's okay. He was just thinking about something else. Sometimes you do that too. And just instantly normalizing it, you know? And so like if
that's really great.
Yeah.
Repeat that again.
Really well. And they don't even think about it. They're just like, oh yeah, sometimes I do that too. Mm-hmm. Cool. And so like, I know at one point, probably several years ago, I think it was 2nd or 3rd grade, my son had a massive meltdown at school because they were watching a video about Helen Keller. And you wouldn't think that a deaf and blind girl would make you like lose your total mind, but it totally did for him. Because when she was young, the video showed that she was very angry and very upset, and she would trash her house, like just knock everything, like just destroy her house. And she was being naughty, and he could not handle watching that. And his poor teacher, it was a sub that day, and she had no idea what was coming for her. But he was suddenly up on his desk screaming at the TV, you don't do that. You are so naughty. You need to sit in timeout. Like looking, and the other kids are like, dude. And he's just like, I can't believe that. And then one little boy said, yeah, she really does need to sit in timeout. And he just goes, yeah. And he sits right down and watches the rest of it. And like, just having that one kid be like, you know what? I hear you. You're right. Helen Keller is trashing her house, and that is not okay. Like, it's completely diffused the situation, whereas the substitute is like getting ready to like evacuate the children, you know, because my kid's up on the desk brandishing a pencil at the TV, you know.
Wow.
And so I think just having kids realize like whatever someone with autism or whatever disability might be doing, they have felt that same way before. Maybe they didn't act that way. Maybe they didn't get up on the desk and yell about Helen Keller, but you've been so mad before, or you've seen something that someone was doing where you're like, that is so wrong. And you have felt that before. So just really encouraging them to kind of look beyond the behavior that maybe is scary. You know, him, I mean, he was 7. So like 7-year-old weighing like 30 pounds up on a desk, like whatever, you're fine. But what if he had been 18 and 6 foot something and however many 100 pounds? Like it's different, you know? So just kind of having people understand, like, when have you felt so angry? You know, when have you felt like you were so mad that you just wanted to bang your head? You know, because honestly, like, a lot of people, even adults, they'll see that kind of behavior and they'll think like, oh, what could possibly be going on? And it's like, honey, I know you've had a day like that. Like we have all had a day like that.
Oh,
you
yes. Know? Oh, yes.
You learned that you don't do that. Whereas to them, it's still acceptable and maybe it serves some purpose. So yeah, that's what I always go for, you know, and it's like, and sometimes there's someone be like, oh, I don't know, I'm still not comfortable. That's okay. I'm not saying you have to be comfortable. I'm just going to explain why, you know, and he's going to calm down and get off the desk in a few minutes, and he'll probably watch the rest of Helen Keller, and, you know, she'll stop trashing her house because she learns how to spell on the hand. Like, it's cool, you know, and so.
Right.
Yeah, I think, and that's the same for any, you know, if someone's really sad and depressed, or if my 12-year-old who gets very anxious, if she's having a meltdown, you know, you don't expect a 12-year-old to go hide under their desk. She totally will sometimes. But the kids are like, oh, you're just really scared, huh? I can see you're just really sad and upset. And I'm so grateful to them. And I'm so grateful to whatever system their school is using, because it is really working well. You know, that the kids are just, they're not sitting there like, oh, don't talk to her. She's the weirdo that hides under her desk. They're just like, yeah, I get really scared too sometimes.
Right.
Or, you know, or her best friend will just go sit with her and be like, it is really nice under here, isn't it? We just chill out for a few minutes and then get back to whatever they were doing. So
yeah, I think
that's acceptance, right? Like that's the definition of acceptance. If you're going to be under your desk, maybe I'll come chill under your desk with you, as long as there's not any gum in my hair, because that's not cool.
Right.
So,
nobody wants gum in their hair, right?
Yeah.
Yes, that's true. And it's so important, especially, we're in the populations that we work with, whether it's someone with a disability or mental health issue or, just going through, that have those parts of them. And I know we all have those parts of us. So really, like, there should be no judgment. Everyone should really continue to be more accepting of others and practice more compassion. And what I always go to is changing their language, being more conscientious of the language you use and how you communicate with others. Things like that, right? It's just, just being more mindful and teaching your children how to be mindful and considerate as well. Just basic fundamental values.
Yeah. And kids are always going to be looking to the adult. If a kid is melting down in the store, and my kids are going to look at me and be like, what do we think about that baby over there? Like, what are we feeling about that? And, if I sit there and I'm like, that is some terrible parenting, then of course that's what they're going to think. I've just modeled that for them.
Exactly the word I was using. You just modeled.
But if I'm just sitting there like, that baby is having a hard day, and I'm pretty sure their parents are having a hard day too, like, maybe we should go ask them if there's anything we can help them with. Like, that's modeling something different. Like, you go into the situation, even if it's just to say, Mommy, we've all been there. You got this. Mm-hmm. All the way through Target. You're fine. Get your groceries. So.
Right. Thanks. Oh, Nick made it at the very end. I appreciate you, Nick. Yeah, I know you weren't going to be able to make it, but we've had a great conversation, Megan.
This has been so fun.
Hour just flew by. You are a wealth of knowledge and information, and you have just kept it coming all hour long. So just like that, as Tim would say, just like that. But I've learned a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you. Let's see. Oh, Travis Storms, what's up? Thank you. All right. And Krista, thank you for being there and supportive, of course. You are awesome. Really good support system here. And that's what we want to create. So
for sure.
All right, my dear Megan. So I guess maybe we should let people connect with you, or is there, I guess I can just drop your information in the chat. If anybody wants to connect with you, or they have questions that they might want to ask you regarding resources, or
absolutely,
I don't know, just some insight, maybe, some advice, anything.
I'm always down to talk about autism or anything else.
If you didn't know.
I don't get out much, so it's super fun to talk to humans.
Right. And I did want to highlight your the organization you work with. I think I had posted it. Oh God, where is it here? For the Center for Autism.org.
Yep.
So I'm gonna put that on there, and I sent it right to the donate page because that's always a good closing call to action. I know that
Autism Center. I mean, they've been around probably in different versions 10 years now. And yeah, they do really great work.
So I think
served.
Yes. And I know there's other organizations, of course, if you want to just give a couple of those that you feel are really good, like Autism Speaks.
Sure. I enjoy Autism Speaks. Some people have, there are a lot of people who have a lot of different feelings about Autism Speaks. I think that, in the grand scheme of things, they're actually changing course and doing a really nice job of trying to come around to what a lot of autism advocates have been asking them to do. I love the Autism ARI, the Autism Research Institute. They do a lot of studies that don't get the mainstream funding. So they will look at something like a dietary change, which generally, there's no money in that. So the, pharmaceutical companies aren't going to pick it up. Maybe Autism Speaks is more funding other things at the time. The NIH is like, if it's not genetics, we don't know who you are.
On their website, the ARI Research Institute,
Autism Research Institute. And they do a lot of really great webinars, which is something, and they've done it before COVID, like now everybody does really great webinars, but ever since I've known about them, they've offered really informative webinars for parents, for, educators, for anyone who just wants to know more. And they cover, sometimes it's like, I don't want to say lower level, but more entry level topics about autism. Other times it's like, we're going to talk about the microglia in the brain. Are you ready? A lot of people are like,
I'm not. No. Can we just start with the signs and symptoms?
Right? Can we take that back? No.
Yeah. All right. Right, Megan. I am
Thank you so much.
had a fun time with you. I know the chat got a lot of information. I'm sure you saw that chat roll, and everyone was really interactive. Can't appreciate their support.
For
Can't
sure.
do this without their support, right? They're the ones that have the information. They continue to create awareness and acceptance. So thank you, everybody.
Sure.
All right, Megan. So I'm going to pull you to the back. We could say our goodbyes. You're more than free to go. If you want to wait, you can hang on to me. I'm going to go ahead and close out the show. Candace just said, I love microgrill. And oh, gosh. Oh, Lord.
Yes, you are my people. Microglia are awesome.
Connect. Y'all can connect then. Yeah, we'll do that. All right, my dear. Well, thank you so much. Truly an honor and a pleasure. And you have a really
good online.
Okay, friends. Thank you, everyone, for being here this evening, this day, whatever time zone you're in, wherever you're checking the replay. I appreciate you. Don't forget to subscribe, follow. Just follow me, stay with me. We've got good topics. Next week, I don't know what we're going to be talking about. It's definitely going to be stress related because we're going to be talking about stress. So I appreciate you. This show came to a quick ending because we just had so much to cover. Again, we're always here to bring awareness, to have these important conversations. We want to seek change for the greater good. We want to advocate. We want to break stigmas. We want to make sure that we are taking down those stereotypes and we are creating more awareness and acceptance like we did tonight. So we want to here to promote inclusion, accessibility, offer support, more opportunities for individuals. And these conversations are here to promote healing and social change. So thank you so much. I appreciate everyone that's been here. Next week, we will be back. I don't know about the guest, but I know we'll be talking about stress, I'm sure. Thanks again to StreamYard powering this live. Don't forget to follow me on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook. And if anybody needs to reach out to me, I'm on LinkedIn. So that's the best platform to reach me at. I hope everyone has a good night, and we'll see you guys next week. Bye.